Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, DJ Adam Cruz, and I have my fantastic host right here.
Eddie Nicholas, what up, beautiful people, and welcome to 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, and also on D-Wild Music Radio.com.
We'll get it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we're here not only giving you fantastic music, we're here to be your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. First out of the gate, we have to talk about it. Mr. Paul McCartney.
What is Paul McCartney? What isn't it Sir Paul McCartney?
And you're right. I think it is Sir. I don't know when he was knighted. It was years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably in the 70s or the 80s or something.
Were you a Beatles fan?
Some of their songs.
So what's your favorite?
I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends.
Great song.
They did another one. Sgt. Pepper, Lonely Hearts Band.
Yes, that's a great album too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyhow, you know that there's been a long-standing feud around some of the Beatles catalog, not the entire catalog. You know, there was a rumor that the entire catalog was owned by Michael Jackson.
But he only purchased some of them?
Correct.
Okay.
So what Michael Jackson did, he outbid, well, let's be clear. There was a lot of, evidently there's a lot of rumor even to this day about how the circumstances led to the Beatles, portions of the Beatles catalog being put up for auction or for sale.
Money, old taxes, drugs, etc., etc., etc.
I'm telling you, it's like you want to laugh because you feel like, oh, that's absurd, but it's actually not. It's like there's so many instances where there's a feud, especially in a band scenario where there's several members. You can imagine the back and forth and the arguments that sometimes happen. Anyway, in 1985, Michael Jackson outbid Paul McCartney
for his own material.
For his own material, yes. Well, these are songs that were co-written by Paul McCartney and John Lennon.
Okay.
So the two of them co-wrote a bunch of songs, including Yesterday, Hey Jude. Let's see. Well, it's not I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends, but I Want to Hold Your Hand. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. But anyway, Michael Jackson outbid Paul McCartney in 1985 to then acquire those songs. So now that Michael Jackson has passed away, the estate owns it, and Sony ATV own it. So they too are co-owners of this portion of the catalog. Well, now what's happening is, do you remember in previous episodes we were talking about Duran Duran and how in England they have this law where that says that you have to adhere by our music laws, and you can't circumvent those laws to say do something or acquire some other deal in another country without our say so, right? Duran Duran is trying to figure out how can they revert the masters of their very first album back to them in the U.S. They can't do it in their motherland in the U.K. because English law says that the copyright is not reverted back to you. But in the U.S., it can be after 35 years. So Duran Duran is trying to they're in the courts right now to deal with this very, very vital debate.
So wait a minute, you mean to tell me over in the UK they can keep your music to perpetuity? What's the word, perpetuity?
In perpetuity. Well, they must have, whatever the deals were struck back then, at the time of Duran Duran's debut LP, doesn't allow them to revert the masters back to them. And today, in England, what Duran Duran is trying to do is see if they can't get them reverted in the U.S., So they're in course to battle this. Now, what does this have to do with Mr. McCartney? Well, nowadays, with Michael Jackson's passing, there's been some selling off that's occurred. In particular, the estate of Michael Jackson sold their share of the catalog to Sony, the co-owner, for $750 million. So now Paul McCartney is basically fighting Sony.
So that's what he's not fighting the Jackson estate.
Right,
he's
not
fighting
anymore.
The Sony estate. Okay.
Did you see how this has been taking decades? We're talking
$700 million.
$750.
Oh!
750, yeah. So this is now 1985. Michael Jackson wins the catalog. You know, he buys it in the auction. Now we're talking 2017, 2018. They're fighting this battle. What's that? 95. That's 20 years later, 30 years later. You know, so it's a fascinating how these things come back around. What's the call to action? If you're a music producer, if you're a songwriter, especially if you're in a band, y'all need to get it together on the agreement tip and understand what reversion clauses are in effect. What's reversion? That's that argument that says after a certain amount of period of time, what happens?
It comes back to you.
That means you can own it and then exploit that master how you will. You want to re-release it, you want to remix it, you want to unreleased versions, whatever you want to do, you can do it because now the master rights have reverted back to you, the master owner. But without those things in place, you can never do that. How does this? What does this have to do with house music? Well, in house music, most times than not, we're signing away single deals or master purchase deals where we never own the material by and large. We can control our publishing portion. That's the part that says we wrote it and forever we'll get money. But that's not about the master rights. So in house music, perhaps you might argue for a reversion clause to be included. Hey, for 10 years, you could do what you want, label, with my song, but after 10 years, I'd like the masters to be reverted back to me. That may not work, but I figured it's worth it to argue that.
And I wouldn't even say 10 years because with the shelf life of the music that we do, I would say 4 to 5 years. And that's it, because 10 years, that's way too long for anybody to have joint copyright with you on work that you slaved and wrote for them just to distribute and release, you know, without really putting any input, but just the mere fact that they got the record and they got the master, so they want to release it. So I would say 4 to 5 years.
Another very valid point to consider. Let's take a break. When we come back on the Freedom Radio Hour, we're going to discuss a very important luncheon that happened recently in Los Angeles, California.
And I was not invited, and
Neither
I was
upset. Neither was I. But these big wigs in the music business got together. These are the folks that handle the royalty administration. They make sure you get paid. We'll have to listen to what they have to say to make sure that you can get most of your money in terms of your royalties. Right where?
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, dwildmusicradio.com.
He did it.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, dwildmusicradio.com. I'm one of your hosts, Edward Nicholas, and I'm sitting up here with one of my buddies, the one and only Mr.
Adam Cruz, and we're live and direct on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. Before we broke, we were talking about Mr. Paul McCartney and his long-standing fight to retain control of the masters for the songs that he and co-writer John Lennon wrote back in the day. We're talking songs like Yesterday, which happened to be my late father's favorite song, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Hey Jude, and others that through a long battle, Michael Jackson and his estate owned, and Sony ATV owned. They co-owned those particular masters. Well, now that Mr. Jackson has passed away, and what Mr. McCartney's trying to do is see if he can't win back that section, except for one big thing. One big thing happened, like we mentioned, which was that the Jackson family, the estate, sold their share of the material back to Sony for $750 million. Like you were talking about this.
I am a gag of that price.
You were talking about this over the break.
That catalog, my God. You know, $750 million, that's enough money to feed a third world country.
It really
to
is.
get that much money for a group of songs, my God, I can't even imagine it. I wish to God a catalog like mine would sell like that, so I got to write a couple of more songs. But more power to you, Jackson family. You made them coins. You set well, and you got paid well for what you sold back.
I feel like this. I feel like
and they probably made double than what he originally bought it for.
Right, because you figure they were exploiting the masters during that time and making money. They were also, the Beatles catalog was a big standout, a holdout rather. They weren't on digital services for the longest time. They didn't become available until much later on. So that was kind of an interesting sort of play there. But beyond that, the reason why we're talking about Paul McCartney and then we mentioned Duran Duran It's basically because the court said you have to wait. The most recent decision that's come in is that we're not going to even decide on your case, Mr. McCartney, until we square away Duran Duran. Why? Because you both are trying to do the same thing, which is try to do reversion or try to regain masters in a country outside of where the masters originated from.
And I can see them doing that because if Duran Duran wins, he sets the precedent for Paul McCartney.
Exactly, and that's what the courts are arguing. They're saying we need to wait until the decision happens in the appellate, because, Duran Duran lost and is appealing. So during the appellate process, they're saying we need to wait until this goes through the process, and then we'll take up your case, because to your very point, the decision will set a precedent so that depending on how this sways or works out for Duran Duran or not, determines how well it'll work out for Mr. McCartney. And
not only
case.
Paul McCartney, but for others in the UK
because you
that
can imagine
that.
We're talking about the biggest artists of our time. A lot of our English artists of our time are basically making their fortunes not just in England, their mother country, but around the globe, especially the U.S. that took such and they embraced the Beatles, for example, so much that they made a lot of money. So it behooves Mr. McCartney and others to try to see what they can do to revert control of that. I wonder if Mr. John Lennon's estate has any say so or is enjoying, because they're not mentioned in these recent reportings.
Well, I would find that odd too, but you're probably correct. They're probably not part of those proceedings once all of that stuff was sold.
Right, like it was done.
It was a done deal. I'm quite sure Miss Yoko got a cute little penny, somewhere around there. Miss Yoko, oh no.
Yes, that's
I'm quite
right.
sure she got a little cute penny somewhere, because she ain't no slouch when it comes to her husband's catalog and money.
Right, you're right. And she even stepped into the arena with music, walking on thin ice.
Her only hit, because all that other stuff. I love you, Yoko, but it ain't working. Yes, Ice, Walking on Thin Ice was your biggest and only hit, my dear. All your other stuff was scatter and scary. We love you, though.
Well, this opens it up. I wanted to talk about this luncheon recently. We were going to talk about this, and we will. But since we're talking about England and what's happening in England, it stands to reason that we should talk about Mr. Ed Sheeran. Mr. Ed Sheeran is this young English guitarist, musician who's blown up the U.S. pop charts with his record entitled "The Shape of You." We covered him before because he has that reggae feel, and it turns out that he wrote that song for Rihanna.
Oh.
Because he wanted to tap into sort of her Caribbean roots, and she declined the song, so he put it out as himself. It's number one all over the place.
And I know she looking like, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I go ahead and take
Well, evidently this is not the first time she's rebuffed a song written for her. The other one, Sia, a popular songwriter and artist, wrote Diamonds for her, and then as a follow-up wrote another song that Rihanna said she didn't want. And so Sia took it. It was that Sean Paul Cheap Thrills record that was number one for weeks and weeks and weeks.
See?
So that happened. Anyhow, but
good for the artist that wrote that, and those other people decided not to take it. But you finish with that because, while we're on this little topic, I've got to talk about Mr. Drake.
Oh, we will talk about that too. That's really important. So let's quickly finish up this thought, which is that in England, Ed Sheeran is like the bomb. He's basically blown up the charts in England.
Who the heck is Ed Sheeran?
He's, you know what? If you talk about it, what he is he's basically an artist that's come up, a guitarist that has really taken the world by storm with the song Shape of You and others. And his latest album entitled Divide has broken the records, including Spotify. Spotify, for the first week, they've never had this many streams of an artist ever. His stream count, 375 million streams of his single in the first week.
And what does that correlate to dollars? About $3,000. So,
because they take it and divide it up and all this, that, and the other. But the interesting thing that these articles are are touting are not just the success of the album Divide, but 62% of the total money that's come in on this album for him are comprised of CD and vinyl sales. They're saying that fans are not only into the streaming, but they also really want to get into they feel more attached to Ed Sheeran when they buy the vinyl, the CD.
Because it's something, it's tangible.
Yes.
It's tangible. It's something you can actually feel, touch. We're humans, so we need the sense of the seeing,
we need to
smelling,
touch it.
we need to
all
touch.
That.
we need to feel. So
they're saying that's the other thing of why they're explaining such a large stream count, because there was a personal feel about Ed. In other words, if you were into him, there was a large percentage of the casual listener that converted into a fan that would go to the concerts. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about that luncheon in LA with the guys that run royalty administration for some of the biggest outfits in the world. And you want to hear what they have to say about how to get your money back to you in a better way.
Yep. 91.6 FM, Heartbeat of Sudan. Boom, 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 boom.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM and on the web at dwildmusicradio.com. You're deep in the zone right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music, business news, and trends from around the globe. I'm here with Eddie Nicholas.
What up, beautiful people? Adam and I were talking, and he was saying something about, what is it about this luncheon that they did not send our invitation to that happened out in California?
I know. Well, evidently, very recently, you're talking about some of the four biggest players in royalty administration. We're talking about the heads of CSAC, some of the heads of MediaNet, some of the heads of Music Reports. I'm getting their letters like crazy, and others. They're basically in the front lines, in the trenches, if you will, in royalty administration. And they talk about several things that they notice that are occurring. You know, people are quick to complain. People, I mean artists, are quick to complain that they don't get enough of their money and all this stuff. So you know how we are always preaching here about transparency. But you know what I've learned through this luncheon is that we ought to focus not just on transparency, which is let us see the trails for where the money is sourced from, the revenue sources. Let's see where it is. Open the books. Let us see it, right? That's what transparency argues. But they're saying not only transparency, but you ought to argue for accuracy. That means another way for trying to see what the math formulas are to determine how much you're entitled to.
Because they daggone sure got accuracy about how much they're going to get off the top, so.
And they're saying some of the easiest ways you can do it is to, number one, get registered. They said that you have no idea how many times when they ask an artist or a songwriter, okay, where are you registered? They aren't actually registered.
Now, clarify registry.
You should be registered with a performance rights organization that is going to deal with the royalties that are due you. Anytime a song is played, you are entitled to money. And what you need to do is register with an organization that can help you track that money and then send you a statement and say how much is owed to you, if any. So they're saying, number one, get registered. ASCAP, CSAC, BMI, Sound Exchange, all of those reporting mechanisms that are online. Do your math, do your due diligence, and go ahead and make sure you're registered, number one. Number two, you want to make sure that you use the systems in place. They said the other part is after you register, people don't even use the system. So they're saying there's lots of databases where you can look up materials. It helps you secure music licenses if you're after that, helps you understand the royalty rate system, et cetera, et cetera.
It's a lot of work and research.
Yes, very, very good segue. They're saying let it become an obsession. They said if you want to really know where your money's going or you want to know why you're not getting paid more, let it become an obsession where you want to know everything, not just transparency, but accuracy. So that's 1 and 2. The third item they want to talk about is communicate. Communicate with your PROs. If there's a problem, you don't understand something, you need to hit them up. One of the last points they're saying is that I have a question for you. When was the last time you went on your PRO's website and updated your titles?
It has been a while. And
they argue that that's most of the time that's what's happening.
People are not updating their titles to their tracks so people can actually track them properly.
And they're saying you can't pay. They said 20% of the income is suspended.
Because people are not.
They're not suspended. Is like a black box. That's that income that's not claimed. So there's some of that is Eddie's money. Some of it could be mine because I haven't done mine maybe in a couple of months. So I have to go back.
So we got to go and do ours.
Yes. But moving on from that, that's a very good point from that luncheon. I wanted to talk going back to Ed Sheeran and how popular he's become because Ed Sheeran had to recently give up some of the royalties, some of the points to Candy Burris and Tiny. Do you know who they are?
If you don't know who they are, you better recognize those are the chicks from the fantastic group that went bankrupt.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they're the songwriters behind them because you know that they recently, Candy Burris
TLC.
And Tiny, yes, they are co-writers on TLC's one of their biggest hits entitled No Scrubs. They weren't part of the group, but Candy and Tiny were part of a 90s R&B group called the Escape.
Uh-huh.
They just recently announced they're reuniting. Just in time for this other news that Ed Sheeran has added Candy and Tiny to the writer's credits on Shape of You, his biggest record at the moment. Why? Because, and I played this for Eddie during the break, that when you play Ed Sheeran's hook, that's the chorus of a song, it's very similar to No Scrubs.
And you can fit it
right on
slap
top.
right on
as
top
he was
of
singing
it.
Scrubs, I started to sing Shape of You, and it's the same hook, essentially, the melodies and such. So Ed Sheeran and his camp graciously granted whatever point. I don't know the particulars of the deal, but let's suffice it to say that Ms. Burris and Ms. Tiny are very happy Instagramming that congratulatory notes towards Ed, who's number one.
And that's the proper way to do it, because he knew right off the top that rift was identifiable,
and it didn't seem to put up much of a fuss.
Argument. So this way, everybody.
Well, this also leads us to a couple of things. First of all, TLC has recently finally put up a date at the end of March or April. They said coming up soon is finally this album that they had crowdfunded, and it took years.
That's what I was getting ready to say, because they were funded by you, the public.
Yes, and it took forever and a day. But the other thing that's occurred is this kind of collaboration that you see with other artists. A lot of the time, you'll get like the TLCs, the Ed, all of them are starting to come together to do collaborations. Like
now speaking of collaborations, a good segue.
Yes.
Black Coffee and Drake.
Okay, stop.
I was supposed to stop.
Yeah, Black Coffee, the number one song for him and his career, arguably, is this record that he did called Superman. And it features the vocals of Busey. Now, proceed.
Now, according to what I've seen, they went back, pulled that track, and Drake has added some of his little jive talking, and they switched the title to call Get
It Together.
Get It Together, Get Some of You. Get something.
Get It Together.
Get It Together. And it's cute, but you're listening to it because we're old heads. We know Superman, it's a crowd pleaser, but we are so over Superman.
Yes. And in-house, Superman was played ad nauseum to the point where you started to lose your affection towards the song that was became really popular. I found it interesting, though, that the hook is not Can You Be My Superman? It is You Gotta Get Your Esh Together.
Yes!
So there's that. The other part is that it doesn't feature Busey on the vocals.
No, but she sounds almost like her in the beginning of the record. What is her, Femi or something like that? Her name starts with an F. I can't remember.
I think her name is Georgia Smith, the vocalist, but there was talk one time that maybe J-Lo was going to do that part.
From the name I read, it was totally different.
Oh, no. What I read was a Georgia Smith, Georja Smith. I will have to check the credits, but either way, it was not Busey, nor was it J-Lo. It's Drake on his brand new album featuring a song. And I found it interesting that while he did his talking, like he said, he didn't change the music at all. It's all Black Coffee's production with this new female singer.
It's like a smash up.
Right. And I find it fascinating that in hip-hop now you got this like harkening back to house music, which happens a lot.
But we always had hip house.
We always did. Look at Doug Lazy. Look at Queen Latifah.
And matter of fact,
one of them,
who was it Doug Lazy that was from Bloomfield? One of them, KRS, one of them was from Bloomfield.
Oh, is that right?
I can't remember, but one of those guys that were very instrumental in doing that type of hip-hop house stuff lived right here in the Bloomfield area a long time ago. But house has always been one of those music that transcends. That's why we have all these different categories.
Exactly. Well, I got to give a shout out to Black Coffee and his whole camp because he's going to
make that money.
Going. Like we were congratulating Babs, Barbara Tucker, and others on that Kanye West record.
Make that money.
That's right. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today on the Freedom Radio Hour. Definitely check out EddieNicholas.com, DJAdamCruz.com, and FreedomRadioHour.com and post under everything we're posting because we'd like to know what you
That's
have
right.
to say.
Keep a watch out. And also come April, Adam and I will be, and Glenn Thornton will be at Ash Lounge in Bloomfield, New Jersey. So if you're in the continental USA,
that's right,
or if you're in the Essex County area, please come and check us out the first Fridays. So do come and check
don't forget, free app available right now for Android and iPhone users. Search us out, Freedom Radio Hour. Get all this business news at your fingertips. Thanks for listening.
Peace.
Capital Radio
6 FM.
Yes, and DWAPmusicradio.com.